Heads up, this is part 2 of a 2-part story. So if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and check out part 1 before watching this one. Don't worry, I can wait. For some reason, even after I saw my bloodshot eye, I kept checking to make sure that it was actually bloodshot, and that I really couldn't see through it. The good news, it wasn't bleeding. On first impressions at least. It actually hit the bridge of my nose, cut it, and then rolled into my eye. And I can only speculate as to what might have happened if it had struck my eye first, but that's besides the point. The school had already called my mom, who, appropriately freaked out, came to pick me up and took me to see a doctor to find out just what the heck was going on. Now, this was before you could just look up doctors and clinics on your phone, so we had to go to the family pediatrician who gave us a referral to an optometrist who took a look at it, had no idea what to think of it, and then gave us a referral for another optometrist in the next city over. After the second doctor did a couple of examinations, it was then that we finally figured out what was up. Keep in mind, this was a long time ago. I was like 10 years old, and I'm not in the medical field, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm not using the most accurate medical terminology. You know how it is. Doctors have to give you enough details for you to understand, but have to dumb down the technical details to not overwhelm you. Years later, I've kinda had to fill in the blanks on my own, as the details from my diagnosis are almost as fuzzy in my memory as my vision was at the time. Sorry to you optometrists out there. Feel free to lend your expertise in the comments below. Assuming I'm remembering correctly. Basically, the physical trauma of having a flipping frisbee flying into my face actually ruptured blood vessels in my eye. That and the resulting inflammation was why it was bloodshot. Now that alone wouldn't cause the blurry vision, but the trauma knocked the lens, the thing that focuses light in your eye, out of position. And as a result, this gel-like substance in the eye called the vitreous body flooded into the resulting space. The result was there were definitely things, literally, in my eye that most certainly weren't supposed to be there. The doctor seemed to think there was a good chance I could recover from this, and spoiler alert, I would, after several weeks. But until I recovered, I was given some eye drops, an eye patch, and I was told that I'd need to make a few return appointments to see how well I was doing. Life went on like that for several weeks. I went to class as usual. The kid who hit me apologized, and over time my eye started to clear up. In fact, the vision of my newly recovered eye was actually better than my uninjured one, weirdly enough. Almost like that whole thing where losing one sense improves the others. A couple of things came up though. For one thing, I was fast-tracked into getting glasses, which was hardly something to complain about. Glasses are a style bonus, and that is a hill I'm willing to die on. So I was actually pretty excited about that. But the glasses were also kind of my only option. Even if I had a mind for it, my doctor said I couldn't really wear contacts because the way I had recovered, my pupil had become slightly off-center from my iris, a condition known as correctopia, which makes contact lenses difficult to put on. But I wanted glasses anyway, so it worked out. Lastly, my pupil couldn't contract anymore. If you shined a light into my face and looked into my eyes, my right one would contract properly, but my left will still be dilated and you just have the void literally staring back at you. This means that my left eye lets in way more light compared to my right, which means I'm more uncomfortable in bright light. Now, you'd think that this would conversely make it easier for me to adjust and see in the dark sooner, but it's actually quite the opposite. See, because it doesn't contract in the light, my left eye is just constantly being bombarded with more light than it should. It all just burns out my retina. You know how if you stare at the sun, you'll end up with a weird dot in your vision for a few minutes? It's like that, except it's all over my vision. I remember when I got on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland a few years later, when it went from brightest day to darkest night, half my vision was already adjusting to the low light, while the other was burnt out and seeing everything as more blacked out and blurry. It's pretty disorienting, but I've since learned to live with it. I've always had a little fun explaining to people when they ask for interesting facts. Even doctors, whenever it comes up, they'll always look so confused or even bewildered when they check for the first time. I haven't had a cop check though. Hopefully it never comes to that, because at that point, I don't think it'll be as fun.